See the work. Get more done. Unlock more time. More money. And more freedom.
Join us as we explore the challenges and power of making work visible. Welcome to the Visible Workplace Podcast with Dr. Tom Raleigh.
Now, let's get into today's episode.
Well, hello and welcome to today's episode as we continue this journey into the exploration of the powerful system for getting things done called the Warrior's Way. Today we'll be covering the stack, the third piece of the productivity system. Again, we will reference and look back to what's already been covered in the last 3 episodes. We've looked at detail at the code that underpins everything. Then we looked at the door, and then finally last week we reviewed the game. But today we're going to look at a particularly powerful aspect of the Warrior's Way known as the stack. Now let's open up with the challenges that you may well be facing. You see, if you use the game to create a 12-month target and monthly missions that take you there, and then use the door each week to hit those missions, what you will open up is a compression of time. That what might typically take 3 years or 5 years, or perhaps some people would never even reach there at all, what is going to happen is that you can compress that down into 1 year. But what you don't realize, and now you will, is that when you do that, you also compress 3 or 5 years worth of problems into that time. So the difficulty is that you bring forward a lot more problems than you were expecting. And not having a methodology to deal with this will leave you stuck, frustrated, and repeating the same problems over and over and unable to access the power and the expansion that's possible with this system. If you just continually do the same week's problems over and over and over, then you will not hit the monthly mission and you will not hit the year. So this is a problem. If you do not have an effective method for dealing with this, then we are stuck. We're literally stuck. You will not be able to progress. The problems will be too much. And so you need an effective method. If you don't have that, then this is a difficulty that won't go away. It won't be solved by hiring new team members or getting a new coach. You see, when you are faced with the same problems over and over and over and have no way to deal with them, then there is no progress. In that effective method, if you don't actually have a way of being able to confront the issue and see the world differently, then even if you have a method, it doesn't really work. You see, to get a new insight into what's not working, then you need to see it differently. Imagine looking at the problem one way and then you step back and see it in a different context and suddenly there's an obvious solution. But if you can't get a new way of seeing the problem, then once again, you are stuck. And this is the overall outcome without a tool like the stack. What is this stack? Well, before we go there, let's talk about an imaginary world where you did have the ability to deal with the problems that are coming up every week effectively and efficiently. Imagine being excited to face more problems in less time because you knew that you could solve them. Like that is a pretty cool place to be, right there. I am willing and excited to compress the results that I get, knowing that more problems will come, but I can trust myself to be able to access those problems, resolve those problems, solve those problems in an effective way. This is a very different frame than being scared or worried about the problems that will come. And in fact, I have been in situations where I will refuse to solve a problem that I can solve because of fear of what will come next. That I don't, I would be like, oh, I don't know what's going to happen. And so having a mechanism, a methodology that can not only solve today, but also give me a framework for solving whatever comes from the future solutions, this gives confidence. This is a trusted method that no matter what I am facing, I have something that I can fall back on and rely on in order to sort out the problems in my life. The ability to see a situation from a new perspective with a new story that I'm telling myself about that situation, and most importantly, derive new actions. This is a wonderfully powerful experience to be with. And so with this tool, then the ability to continually overcome obstacles that are faced every day doesn't become a worry. It becomes a weapon. It's like, whatever the situation is, I know I've got it covered. And not just in business, because the problems that you and I face are not just happening in the realm of making money, but they're also with our families, with our purpose, our understanding of what this whole life thing's about. Like, what do you do with that? If you've got no tool, it's just a bit of a mystery. It's a digging in the mud, hoping that you find a piece of gold. And then finally, the body. I am not doing anything without this body. I'm speaking to you right now using my body. And so looking after the body is also a challenge. And so having a tool that can access solutions across all four of these areas is extremely powerful. So, what is the stack? Well, the stack is a series of questions. Pretty easy, just a series of questions. And you might immediately at this point dismiss this and say, well, how powerful and how effective can a series of questions be? And this is a very good question. It's like, wow, okay, I don't know, like, what kind of questions are these? And to look at that, we're going to have to take a little step back in time to a place where Wake Up Warrior was, which is where this tool came from, was struggling. The men were in power. They had unlocked what we'll cover next week, the core four, the ability to have a daily habit that increased power across all areas of life. But the problems that were coming thicker and faster than they could deal with. They had power and this was creating results, but the problems kept coming. As those new and better results opened up, they were then left with a situation of like, well, how do we deal with this? And into this came a series of questions, a combination of tools being put together to release at the beginning, just get the emotions out around the situation. And that itself was a very powerful experience. Something happened, some kind of trigger happened, and then I, as a man, and you, as a human being, will have a response to that. And having a framework to be able to go, well, this is what happened, and this is what I feel about it, and this is the story I'm telling about it. And these questions, just at the very beginning, opened up an ability to describe what was going on and get clarity about the situation. And then from there, having got clear on the emotions and the facts and a good clear picture of the situation, then it evolved into this next very interesting part, which was, what is the story that I'm telling myself about this situation? And this referenced the work of Byron Katie. Now, I'd heard about Byron Katie for some time, but I had never actually gone into her work at all. But Byron Katie was a lady who appeared to have a moment of insight, a spiritual breakthrough. And she had been struggling, and then this moment happened, and she came up with this idea of the story that I'm telling myself is driving my behavior. And she came up with this idea, well, here's the first story I'm telling, and maybe we could change it. And we could look, if the story's about someone else, well, where does that story apply to me? And then we could potentially look at the opposite story, the complete opposite story. And is there any evidence that that was true? And then finally, coming across to an opportunity to create a new story about this situation that would apply to the situation. And so the work, Byron Katie's work, referenced these stories. But the challenge was that the Byron Katie's experience was just to become okay with whatever was going on. There was this situation, and then by going through these stories, then becoming okay with it. It's just like, all right, well, that's good. But it wasn't that useful. It certainly neutralized the emotions, but it didn't open up anything new. And so a third part of the stack experience opened up, and this was to create a new reality. That by taking that desired story and applying it to the situation, what could I see differently? And what lesson could come out of this? You see, it's all very good and well to be able to release the emotions and clarify the situation, and then become aware of the story and choose a better story. But if I didn't learn anything, then potentially I'm destined to repeat that situation until I get the lesson. And so out of that came a lesson learnt. And then this lesson was applied to the 4 areas of life. How does this lesson apply to my body? How does it apply to my being or my spirituality? How does it apply to my balance, my family? How does it apply to my business? And taking that lesson and applying it to those 4 areas then expanded the potency and the power of that lesson. And then finally, having been through all of this, there was an opportunity to lock it all down with an action or multiple actions. You see, having clarified it, having looked at the stories, having learnt the lesson and applied it, this was an entirely new frame to see the world by. And then looking at the same situation, I was changed. The men were changed, and they saw this very same situation with new eyes. And in that, seeing an opportunity to do something different, take a new action. That which was not visible before became visible. Whether that was reaching out to someone, whether that was doing something differently, whatever it was a new action. And by taking that new action, something changed in the world. You see, even if all of that previous work was done, if there was no action taken, then nothing changed. Yes, I might be clear. Yes, I might be aware of my stories. Yes, I might have this nice lesson. But without action being taken, nothing would change. And so the stack began as this relatively large experience. This was called the mega stack. It was it took like 45 minutes to 60 minutes, hour and a half first couple of times, and then there was some smoothness that came. And we did this for days after days after days. Men were hitting 5 in a row, 10 in a row, 30 in a row, 60 in a row, 90 in a row. And back in the day, the app that handled this had rewards. At 5 days in a row, you got a reward. At 10 days in a row, a reward. And so there was this gamification of the experience as well as the actions and the new reality being taken. So this is where the game was probably around 2017, 2018. And then there was an evolution. A very interesting thing started happening. men started being able to let go of their rage. They were no longer so rageful, but rather anger and irritability came up, and a smaller version of the questions was evolved. And then a most interesting thing happened, which was happiness. Men started feeling happy. And this sounds ridiculous, but it certainly was an experience at the time. It's like, whoa, feeling happy. I'm getting results. My life's working. And so there was a small version called the happy stack to be used to leverage happiness. And this went on and more came out. The gratitude stack, the appreciation stack, to say thank you and to be grateful. Again, a smaller experience, 20 minutes or so, but an opportunity to clarify thought and experience powerful emotions and have more actions come out. And then at some point during the COVID years, a very peculiar thing happened with the stack. And that was that a man said, what about a prayer stack? And the prayer stack began to evolve. It was a very open format. The questions were not so defined, and it was an opportunity just to get out what was going on in my life, whatever format that took. And then at the end, there was this very open experience and conversations with a higher force or, the God or the universe began to happen. It was most peculiar, unexpected. But in that, guidance not from me, but guidance from, let's call it the universe, began to open up. Hey, do this. Have you thought about it this way? And the insights and the wisdom and the challenges that came from this have been profound. Very, very, very difficult, but very, very rewarding to do. When I have been asked by the universe to do certain things, sometimes it's been absolutely wild, so difficult, like the last thing that I want to do. And yet, if I take those steps, often what would happen is that the things that I could see were not really what that action step was about at all. It was the next three down the way, that 3 actions further on, suddenly it became available and clear what that first one was all about. But at the time, it was like stepping out in Indiana Jones and the Holy Grail. I don't know if you know this scene, but essentially Indy gets to the 3rd test and there's a chasm there. There's this gaping hole that appears that if you step into it, you will die. But the pathway is perfectly hidden and it takes a leap of faith to step forward. And that is commonly the experience that happens with this. It's quite profound. It's quite amazing. But this tool, the stack, it is an experience that is worth having because it gives you the ability to confront the problems in your life in a consistent way that will give new revelations and new actions to take. And if the compression of problems in your life happens because you set targets and build in monthly missions and execute, you will face more problems. And the stack is the ability to clarify the problem and think about it in a new way in order to get the new actions that fix that problem. Knowing that next week there's going to be more problems. And this ability is close to a superpower. And it is available in a software, available in an app. In fact, the app has 2 versions. One is the Stack app, and it just has this. And then the second one, the Warrior app, has all of these tools, the game and the door and the stack, and next week's topic, the core 4. But these all come together either in a comprehensive game, but even just the stack alone is a powerful weapon that your team can utilize, that you can utilize, that your family can utilize in order to experience what is possible with this. Your ability to confront and solve problems will play out directly into the life that you experience. Continue suffering with the same problems over and over and over, you will not have any progress. You will continue to experience the same existence over and over and over until you work out a way to solve that problem. But what you really want is something like the stack, where it is the general solution for confronting problems in your life. And so that concludes our episode today. If you want help with this, then you can either head over to magicboards.io, or if you want to go to the source, you can head over to wakeupwarrior.com and grab a copy of the software there. Either way, I highly recommend that you do this. This is a very powerful tool, something that has served me incredibly well for the last 4 or 5 years that I have been doing it, and it continues to be a daily practice for me. All right, that's all we got for today. Next week, we will bring up the 6th and final episode in this Warrior's Way experience, and then we will head back into the magic boards and making work visible from there. Thanks so much for joining me. Look forward to seeing you in the next episode very soon.
Thanks for tuning into the Visible Workplace Podcast. Subscribe for more productivity tips and share with friends. We love your feedback, so please rate and review us on your favorite podcast platform. For more tips and tools, visit www.magicboards.io. Thanks again, and see you next episode. Disclaimer: the information and ideas discussed in this episode are general in nature and do not take into account your specific circumstances. You should seek specialist advice for any medical, financial, emotional, mental, or other difficulties that you are facing with appropriate specialists and professionals so that they can apply your specific circumstances and give you the required advice.